Chris Hattingh here, from the Center for Risk Analysis, coming to you all from in front of the White House here in Washington, D.C. I've spent the last week in D.C. meeting with various think tanks, stakeholders, various engagements, trying to get a sense of things on the ground here, and of course the relationship between the US and South Africa. This coming Sunday, so as I record on Thursday, coming Sunday, should see the return of former South African ambassador Ibrahim Rasool going back to South Africa, given his being declared persona non grata here in Washington. So a time of increased fracture between South Africa and the US, but just some takeaways, some thoughts from my time here in terms of the engagements. We're seeing a lot of sentiment positive from the business side towards South Africa. A lot of think tanks want to engage and work with South African business and South African interests where possible. But the administration at this point in time is much more transactional, much more pragmatic, and it's up to South Africa to realize and deal with that accordingly. It doesn't help wishing that things were different and wishing that reality was different from what it is. So in our assessment, some of our recommendations from the CRA side for South Africa is to come to Washington when the president does send some sort of envoy, is to engage on terms of trade and investment and from a mutually beneficial point of view from South Africa. So not to focus on things like US foreign aid and AGOA come and say that, okay, we realize AGOA is at an end, we want to propose something better. So some sort of bilateral trade agreement, maybe representing SADC, other regions in the region, talking about implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, etc. I think if South Africa engages on those terms, if South Africa doesn't portend to be a moral superpower anymore, don't just focus on vibes and sentiment, but focus on practical things that South Africa can bring to the table in engaging with the US. Also being a stronger regional player in Southern Africa. So if we talk about security concerns for the US, intelligence concerns, South Africa needs to come and show that it's active in its region, that it's taking responsibility. It's not just coming to Washington to want benefits, aid, other forms of just the US trying to shore up its own benefits. So there are ways the relationship can be improved. Of course, it's at a low point, so things can always be improved from that. But also from the South African side, there's a requirement to focus on the basics. So should the new ambassador come in, it's just you want the ambassador to focus on his duties, you want the embassy to be fit for purpose. You just want South Africa to focus on building up the relationship again from a position of mutual win-win, not a sense of that South Africa is just coming to ask for favors. Just in terms of other elements that could be explored, we're looking at South Africa's mineral resources, of course. We're looking at South Africa as having well-developed financial markets, still well-developed infrastructure, although quite a bit of that is in decline. But if South Africa can show that it has those well-developed links with the rest of the region, that it's being serious about getting its domestic house in order in terms of implementing reforms and policies that are pro-growth, pro-investment, that we want to put ourselves on a better growth track, that would also shore up things here in Washington. So much, of course, is about perception and narrative, and at the moment the narrative towards South Africa, at least from the administration, has of course been negative. But within that is an opportunity for South Africa in terms of the attention it is being afforded. So can South Africa use almost the free PR and the free attention it is being given by Washington to put forward what should be strong in economic investment and trade benefits for the US to engage in South Africa and in the region. Of course, all of this takes place in the context of the G20 being hosted in South Africa this year. South Africa hands over the G20 presidency to the US at the end of its term. So at this point in time, it's not that clear whether President Trump will attend the G20 summit in November. But let's see exactly what continues to shake out now going forward. Of course, so much of what we see on the global stage is also from the lens, or should be considered from the lens of US domestic politics. So when the administration here says certain things on various foreign policy and geopolitical matters, they're also trying to play what they think are their best cards in US domestic politics. And I think it's important for South Africa to realize that as well, to engage on that reality that is the case in the US, and in terms of whether they're realistic in those engagements or not. So all in all, the main takeaway, it is very much a time of change in terms of South Africa's foreign policy and engagement with the US. We've tried to, from the government side, tried to be a moral superpower, tried to talk about values and that sort of thing, but we can't be sentiment and vibes based anymore. We need to be reality oriented. We need to focus on what we bring to the table. How do we address concerns that have emanated from Washington, from the administration side, but also from other players in the US who have engaged with the administration. Do we engage with those properly, or do we continue as we've been going before? Former President Mandela, he said that his biggest regret in life was that he never won the World Heavyweight Boxing Championship. And for South Africa, maybe the best advice in terms of foreign policy and engagement with the US and other countries is boxing smart. So what we mean by that is figure out your weaknesses, figure out your strengths, build on those, and also engage with countries like the US, a military, diplomatic, economic superpower, on the right sort of terms. Don't come as a supplicant, show strength and backbone where applicable, address the concerns that have been voiced in a proper manner. Don't try and pretend that things are different than what they are, and proceed accordingly. It is an opportunity here for South Africa to really reset things going forward, not just with the US but with other countries, to not just go between major superpowers and ask for aid and ask for support, but to do things domestically properly, that we implement the right reforms that we need, but also to get the investments that we should get from places like the US on the right sort of terms. So all in all, things are volatile and uncertain, but we think there are definitely opportunities here for South Africa to build upon going forward. That's the reception that we've had, and we think that should be used going forward. But until next time, this has been Chris Hattingh for the Centre for Risk Analysis. Take care. See you all again very soon. Cheers.